Good evening, everyone. Kamal Samiev is in the chat. Welcome. Then, Kamal, you'll have to tell me how well can you hear me? Hopefully loud and clear. I've been thinking about the news. Current affairs. Going to do a little bit of current affairs chat, if anyone is up for that. And I'm hoping that I've remedied my microphone issues. So, a big story today is the fact that Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir has been revoked by the Indian government. So, Kashmir is a Muslim majority area of India, the only Muslim majority province of India. And there's a lot of feeling in Kashmir that really partly they would have preferred to have been part of Pakistan when Great Britain severed the country and partitioned it into two and then later three separate entities. Pakistan was meant to be this Muslim entity, the state for the Muslims, and India the state for the Hindus, but somehow this Kashmir area was given to India or became part of India. And I always sort of believed that that was against the will of the people of Kashmir. Why would this majority Muslim part of India not want to be part of Pakistan? And incidentally, I think probably a large proportion of Kashmiris actually want to be their own separate country of Kashmir, and they would be Kashmiri independent thinking people. But at the time, when the nation was partitioned, this Article 370 declared that Kashmir, if it joined India, would have a certain degree of autonomy, a greater level of autonomy than any other part of India. So with that, Kashmir became a consenting part of India, but the consent that was given back then has now been revoked, and this autonomy from the region has been withdrawn. And I would imagine this is going to set the region on fire and make an awful lot of people angry. But how long does consent last? And presumably, if this decision was made in 1947, 72 years ago, when the partition of India happened, then at least the majority of people in Kashmir at that time are now dead. So does it apply? Is it a promise that has to be kept to the Kashmiri people forever, that they will have this level of autonomy? India calls itself the world's largest democracy, but I don't think it's being very democratic to withdraw autonomy that was a condition for that region joining. But then again, why should it have special treatment? If you're part of India, shouldn't you just be part of India and there's no special areas for Muslims, special area for Hindus, special area for Sikhs? And the BJP, Modi's party, being very much Hindu nationalist, maybe that's why they're going down this road. But it got me thinking about autonomy and occupation in various parts of the world. Even the north of Ireland is being run directly from London at the moment. The Parliament at Stormont is suffering under direct rule And all sides in the north of Ireland claim that they want devolution and autonomy for the 6 counties in the north of Ireland. But I always wonder how the unionists really feel about that. Do unionists secretly want to be ruled by London? Are there Hindu people in Kashmir who are much happier to be ruled by India and not have the local autonomy extended to Jammu and Kashmir if they're living as a minority within the region, but a majority within the country at large? I think this is the fear of the loyalists in the north of Ireland, and it's not a completely religious equals political divide. There have and always will be Irish nationalists of a Protestant background, but for the loyalists who want to preserve the Protestant ascendancy, as it were, or the Protestant dominance in the north of Ireland, they enjoy a marginal majority in the 6 counties, as they were gerrymandered as such to be that way. But they would, of course, very quickly be a minority were we to cancel the whole thing out and just have a united Ireland. However, if you look at the representation given to the loyalist parties and the loyalist members of Parliament in Stormont, those that take their seat in Westminster, there's still a tiny proportion of power and proportion of the UK population. If you take the north of Ireland as having something like 1 million people out of 60 million in the UK, were they to represent themselves at the Dáil, God forbid, I know Ian Paisley's turning in his grave, but you would go from being 1/60th of the population of a country to 1/6. Surely you would have a lot more say in what goes on in the country. And I strongly believe in a united Ireland. However, if we are to advertise it to the loyalists, you're going to have to offer some kind of an incentive, some kind of an autonomy. And I think the proposed new Ireland, Éire Nua, there was an idea knocking around, I think in the 70s, would be that the 4 provinces, Ulster, Munster, Connaught and Leinster, would all have a level of autonomy. We got some comments coming in. I don't know why these comments never scroll. Chow Dem saying, hope you're having a good night and not cold out. Yeah, I'm having a good night. It's not cold. I've got my scarf on and my mic. I hope we keep picking up the sound loud and clear. So yeah, autonomy in countries got me thinking about the Kurds of Iraq, one of the political chess pieces of the Middle East that have been used and abused and thrown around. And I used to favour Kurdish independence and feel for the Kurdish cause and the Kurdish people, and I still do, because I think an independent people with a separate language and a separate culture living in a contiguous region deserve some kind of autonomy. However, it's sad that that struggle has been hijacked by other agendas and has been used, and people have been pitted against others. And it's no surprise that the Peshmerga were armed and trained to fight the likes of ISIS in Iraq and Syria, because the Peshmerga, or the Kurds, are not attached to a state. They are a stateless people. Therefore, they are easier to control, perhaps easier to buy and bribe. I think it's harder to bribe a state or a nation with an army. I could be wrong, but I think that's the wisdom behind the arming and training of the Peshmerga. And we look at other occupations around the world. And I know China has been in the crosshairs recently. And this Gilets Jaunes style uprising in Hong Kong. We took the camera to the streets of London when they had their protest and they had their open top bus and the campaign for an independent Hong Kong. Hong Kong, and here are the parallels between what's happening in Kashmir and what's happening in Hong Kong. Regions within a country that are promised a level of autonomy that are having that autonomy taken away from them. And it will be interesting to see how it's played out in the media, how it's portrayed, and which media outlets mention which stories. But Hong Kong, historically a region of China with a unique language, a unique culture. They speak Cantonese and not the Mandarin of the majority mainland. And it was under British autonomy until 1997. And good friends of mine own a Chinese restaurant called Hong Kong 97, which is, of course, out of respect to that moment. And this was a promise that was made 99 years before, that after 99 years, Hong Kong would be given back to China, but would retain a level of autonomy and would preserve their unique identity and culture, infrastructure, even in terms of the economy. And the majority of Chinese people that you meet in this country would probably be from Hong Kong, would be of a Cantonese background. But yet again, making a promise 99 years ago, you're making a promise that you're not going to reap the benefits of. It's almost like saying, oh, it's never going to happen. And I heard somewhere that in London, or certain areas in London, if you buy a house, you're actually only buying it for 99 years. And most people don't expect to live for until they're 99, never mind another 99 years. And I think the people that think long term, the richest people in the world, the richest families in the world, didn't become rich overnight. And you fall into the trap by thinking in the short term. You need to think long term if you want to accumulate wealth. But we're being told things like the world's going to end in 12 years. So what's the point? And a lot of religious people, the kind that wear the sandwich board and run up and down the street saying the end is nigh, have convinced themselves that the world is about to end. I say it myself sometimes. Oh, what are you doing next year? No point. The world's about to end. And people will convince themselves that all the signs are there. But for generations, people have always thought that the world is going to end. So we mustn't be short-sighted. But things are certainly changing. And China occupying Hong Kong, not really an occupation, but China exercising authority in Hong Kong and depriving Hong Kong of the autonomy that they were promised 99 years ago. India revoking the autonomy that Kashmir was promised 72 years ago. In Iraq, in Erbil and the Kurdish region, there is more autonomy than ever before. Now, I know Kurdish people suffered greatly under Saddam Hussein. and were massacred in their thousands. However, there was a degree of autonomy for Kurdish people under Saddam. I believe the language was used in the locality. Schools could teach in Kurdish. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but I believe Kurdish was accepted as an official language in that region of Iraq. However, understandably, Kurdish people want more autonomy than that, and that's fair enough. But now, post-Saddam, post-American occupation, Erbil and the surrounding area is almost an independent country. And you can fly to the airport in Erbil and attain a visa on arrival, which is something you can't do if you're traveling to other parts of Iraq. So it has become ostensibly an independent region. So going back to China, which, as I said, has been in the crosshairs, has been in the news. About 2 weeks ago, everyone was talking about the treatment of Muslims in China and concentration camp type scenarios, re-education camps, whatever it is. There's also the occupation of Tibet. And this is where the biases come through. And as a person on the left, growing up on the left, if you only read the left-wing sources, the left can be very skeptical about the occupation of Tibet. The Dalai Lama is seen as some kind of Western puppet who is instigating problems in China and is doing the job of being a thorn in their side. These are my biases coming through now, and I have to admit, I think there is truth in that. But recently, I've been really trying to put the shoe on the other foot, and whatever biases I have, I'm trying to see the other side of the coin and imagine what someone making the other argument would say. There's a great YouTube channel, by the way, another great YouTube channel by a guy called George from Ireland. Look him up, George from Ireland. And he's obviously a very well-educated man, and he's come up through, I would imagine, one of the top universities in the country. And often he'll start a video and he'll make the case for a certain argument, a certain agenda. So for example, a united Ireland, and he'll be making all the arguments that someone from my perspective would agree with, and I'm like, yeah, Irish unity, Ireland for the Irish, 32 counties all together. Then, halfway through the video, he would start making the complete opposite point, and he's making really, really good points, and he'll make both arguments so well that perhaps you couldn't even tell what he really thinks. And my guess is that he's been a member of the debating club or whatever it is at university, but he's really good at what he does, and it's good because it makes you think. So whatever political point you're really passionate about, whether it's Ireland for the Irish or whatever it is, try and think of the other side of the coin. And Abu North is saying, Assalamu alaikum, brother. Wa alaikum salam, Abu North, the father of the North. Oh, is there an Abu South, Abu East and West? I wonder. Peace and blessings. Thank you very much, sir. And it's lovely when you guys tune in and chip in. Assalamu alaikum, great dunya. Good to have you in here as well. I'm really glad that we're getting regulars on here and people that dip in and say hi. It's very much appreciated. So yeah, I've been trying to do the mental gymnastics of seeing the other side, what points the other side would make. And sometimes, and this is the case I often make regarding Palestine, that I think generally both sides agree about what happened and the facts on the ground, but they disagree about whether it was justified. Even some of the staunch Zionists will admit that there were operations to clear people out of villages, or there were battles that led to people being driven out of their land, but it was necessary and there was other crimes on the other side, and that justified it. Abby North is saying, I love your Pakistan videos. You should get the brother from Pakistan. I forgot his name. More on the live stream. Yeah, that's Ali, who joined me for a live stream the other night, which was great. And watch out for Ali, because he has a role coming up in some online media. Can't say too much about it, but he will have something in the pipeline. Dardasha saying, Salam, lesson for life. Always good topics to highlight. Thank you very much. I didn't know exactly which topics to put in the title, because I knew I'd just go off on one and end up talking about everything. So I kind of made it vague, saying we're talking about the news, but I appreciate you saying that. I've been also saying, brother, I'm going to send my number to Ards. I will WhatsApp you all the time. Yeah, superb. And if anyone does need to get in touch, Lessons for Life 247@gmail.com is the email. Ray Denny is saying, Lesson for Life done at MMA. I've dabbled a little bit here and there in a bit of MMA, boxing, even competed in some K1 recently, which was great fun. I'm hoping to take the camera to a boxing club tomorrow and see if I can get some footage there. Valiant Joker is saying, Salam, Julian, free Palestine, inshallah. Ameen to that. But of course, we have to remember the other side. And the only way you're going to free Palestine is by not winning the fight, but winning the argument. If we win the argument, the world will help us win the fight, and hopefully it will be this kind of fight, the good fight, not the violent one. I'm not saying violence is never called for, it's called for in self-defense, but just like in South Africa, where the cause of liberation happened, as they say, between the anvil of boycotting, sanctions and divestment, the kind of things the BDS movement are doing, and the hammer, of course, of the ANC, who did use aggressive resistance, but when it was time for peace, Nelson Mandela talked about forgiveness, and that is the most important thing. I've been also saying, Lessons for Life, you seem very humble, so I tune in, big up. Thank you very much, thank you, and well, I am very humble, even if I do say so myself. That was a ironic joke. And let's have a look at more comments. Oh, they deleted it. No problem. But yeah, we've got Tibet is occupied by China. I'm on the left, so I'm skeptical about that issue. There's no doubt China, love them or hate them, is an authoritarian regime. And growing up in the West, we get our perspective of what happened during events like Tiananmen Square. And it's always held up as this moment of resistance, and the lone man standing in front of the tank, standing up to this brutal regime. But is that just Western propaganda? Have they grossly exaggerated what happened in Tiananmen Square? Are they pointing to Tiananmen Square while hiding their own crimes and the thousands that the West have murdered elsewhere, in Iraq, in Libya, in Afghanistan? But they want to point to Tiananmen Square and say, look how terrible the Chinese are. But the fact is, there are atrocities committed by all sides. So we have to admit that as well. I've been revisiting the great book that I mentioned on a live stream the other day, 1984, which, strangely enough, I was sitting discussing what the future will be like with a film producer who's making a film about the future, and I said, this is very much like 1984. And then 5 minutes later, a boy showed up with his family at a dinner table reading none other than 1984. So I took that as a sign that the universe is telling me to go and read 1984, or at least listen to it as an audio book. And in 1984, the dark prediction about a dystopian future, George Orwell, although very much a leftist and very much on the left, was actually criticizing Stalin, who is the leader of the Soviet Union and very much on the left, but of course transgressed the values that the left were all about. And that's someone on the left criticizing his own side. We must criticize our own team. And of the two shootings at the weekend, or in the past few days, the usual suspects are the lone wolf right-wing men. There was a shooting in El Paso and another one in Dayton, I believe it was. And it seems that the shooter in Dayton was a leftist. He was on the left and he was pro-Democrat. And this doesn't fit the usual narrative, but some honourable members of the left are calling it out and saying we have a problem. And in fact, I think it was his misogyny, his hatred of women, that led to him committing the atrocity. I wonder where we get hatred of women from. I wonder why people disrespect women. So it's there on the left, it's there on the right. You have to call it out wherever you find it. Now, although I've grown up on the left, Stalin, I think because of people like George Orwell who called him out, he's a bit much for even most people on the left. And it's sort of taken for granted that Stalin is a little bit of a villain. Well, I did have a friend who came to this country from the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, and he was a bit surprised. And he said to me, oh, in this country, do people think of Stalin as a bit of a villain? I said, yeah, because we are told from day one, from our mother's milk, Stalin is Stalin bad, Stalin bad, Stalin bad, Stalingrad. Funny Joke is saying, I think we're all in a situation more like Orwell's Animal Farm. Now there's another good book as well. I began reading Animal Farm and lost track of it. I never completed it, but obviously I've seen the cartoon they show at Christmas. I know what happens in the end. And Napoleon, the main pig, is the leader. Does he represent Stalin? Is that another critique of Stalinism? It certainly explains how people can start out well-intentioned and then someone poisons the fruit punch. The milk turns sour. And this is the same again and again and again. And I had a chat a few weeks ago about the situation in Syria and the extremists that are present within the revolution of Syria. And the guy asked me, what do you think the Free Syria Army are extremists? And I said, well, some of them are. The well-intentioned grassroots people that began those demonstrations in Daraa, in the south of the country, who were on about wages and living conditions, that revolution quickly got poisoned. By whom? We don't know. Why? We don't know. But it happens again and again. And I think it did happen in the Soviet Union, and I think Stalin was murderous and a dictator. But am I just buying the propaganda? I have to question myself. And I've got a left-leaning friend at the moment who's inviting me to come to the Stalin Society and come for a talk, and I'm a bit dismissive of it, but really, maybe I do need to open my mind. But where do you draw the line? What if a right-winger wanted me to come to an EDL march? Maybe. What about BNP? What about KKK? It's a fine line between seeing what the shoe is like on the other foot and actually condoning racism and violence and hatred. I don't know. It's a difficult one. It's hard to know when people are too far gone. Valiant Joker's got a quote for us. The creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again. But already it was impossible to say which was which. Now there's a powerful quote. Yeah. So, yeah, there's parallels now that I'm seeing between Animal Farm and 1984. How this constant reminder of the enemy, the enemy, the enemy, the enemy. And in 1984, it was Oceania or whichever other group of countries they were at war with at the time, and during the hour of hate, everyone would get up in the morning and chant hatred towards whichever group it was that week, and it would change. Very much like this week's tabloids, here today, gone tomorrow, such and such is a scandalous story, and it'll be in the news for a week or so, and then it'll fade away, and then we'll forget it. It'll be like it was never there, and the news gets very sort of hazy, and there's this treadmill of repeating certain mantras and people as enemy, and then it goes away. And of course, in Animal Farm, man is the enemy and is constantly used as this kind of boogeyman threat, like we need to accept the dictatorship of Napoleon and the other pigs, because if we don't, God knows what's going to happen. The man is going to come back. And it's about maintaining order through that threat. And I was saying the other night how some places are more peaceful than others. And I plucked some examples out of the air, out of context. But when you think about it, if a place is being kept peaceful under the threat of the kosh or the knife or the gun or whatever it is that actually peaceful? Just because the people aren't resisting doesn't mean that there isn't oppression. And when people resist the oppression, obviously you don't make an omelette without cracking a few eggs. And people say, wasn't Iraq more peaceful under Saddam Hussein? Yes, statistically it was, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't oppression going on. Although I do happen to think Iraq was better off under Saddam Hussein, just my personal opinion. The lower life is saying the FSA, meaning the Free Syria Army, has become a total terror group. Well, I think they've certainly been infiltrated by many terror groups, and this is the problem. They're not one entity, and we're using this collective term for one thing. Abu North is asking, lessons for life, do you believe in ghosts? I think if you look at that statue right there, where is it? That's enough to make most people believe in ghosts. I don't know. I'm open-minded, but depends what you mean by ghosts, really. Spirit, the Holy Ghost, Jinn. Abu North is saying, I heard Modi cursed the Sahaba, he should take that back because you can't be Muslim if you do. Well, I don't know enough about that. To me, this is all, again, the divide and conquer that we're going through at the moment. There are some differences that we will never agree on, but we have to put them to one side because there are more important issues. For some people, that's That's the fact that the world is going to end in 12 years. Or is it really? We don't know. Valiant Joker is saying also both the Shias and Sunnis of Palestine agreed with the Mufti. There aren't many Shias in Palestine, from what I know. You'd have to go north to, I'm not saying there aren't any, but it would be a very, very rare sight to find a Shia Muslim in Palestine. You'd have to go north to Lebanon. And this is a point to be made when people talk about Shia Sunni in terms of geopolitics and what's Iran's game in the Middle East. Why were Iran favourative towards Hamas? Why did they provide them weapons? Hamas, who are a Sunni Muslim Brotherhood type armed faction. So I think the Islamic Republic of Iran has often put aside the sectarian differences in a way that perhaps other political entities in the region haven't. Although on the ground in Palestine, when I have asked the question to politically minded people, how about the Islamic Republic of Iran? Are you glad that they're helping you? They're sending aid, they're sending weapons? I got a few answers that would seem a little bit dismissive of it, and maybe even a little bit sectarian, and saying, well, they're not helping us for our own reason, it's for their own interest. And in fact, a dear friend of mine who was killed by the occupation forces, a guy called Hashim, who was the last surviving individual living in a certain area of Hebron, surrounded completely by settlers on all sides. As he called them, they're not very friendly neighbours. When I asked him, what about the Islamic Republic of Iran? Are they standing strong with Palestine? He said, and I think this is sectarianism coming forward, and God rest him and God forgive him and forgive me for saying this, but he was very sceptical, and he said, understand something. In the Middle East, the West, Britain and America, have two babies, a big baby and a little baby. And he was implying that Israel is the big, but these are his views, not mine. Israel is the big baby, set there to do the bidding of the West, and that Iran is the little baby. And one of them is a well-behaved child and one of them is a bad-behaved child. I think the bad-behaved child, i.e. Iran, but is still a child of the West. So his argument would be that Islamic Republic was somehow instigated by the West. I don't know. The reason the Islamic Republic is there, from my understanding, is due to a backlash from what the West did by removing a democratically elected prime minister in the form of Dr. Mossadegh and installing a tyrant king, the Shah, who ruled tyrannically for a couple of decades, so much so that in the end he was overthrown by the Islamic Republic, and you had this swing of the pendulum from pro-Western secularism towards radical Shia Islamism. Now, are they that clever at planning? I know they planned and God planned, but that would be one hell of a plan. I've been all saying thank you for being humble and reading my message. Oh, thank you. I love it when people message in here. It gives me something to talk about. And we've got some other messages coming through. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the Palestinian people. Ameen. Thank you. And Valiant Joker is saying he agrees about the two babies. Okay. Well, it's an interesting theory. And I love my conspiracy theory. I definitely find it interesting that Ayatollah Khomeini was in France when he returned to Iran, or Persia, as you can say. It is curious that, what was he doing in France? And France are they're the forgotten imperialist power. I think because they've kind of taken a backstage, people forget that the French might have some imperial ambitions. I've always perhaps cooperated with the other Western imperial powers, or maybe competed with as well. We don't know. And Abinur saying, I heard American Christian ministers are frauding money out of the people. Well, that wouldn't surprise me. If you want to make a lot of money, open up a church. The Vatican's got, I think, more gold than Aladdin's cave. Let's have a look. Khomeini, the Khomeini book is terrible. Wallahi, I read it and felt upset. Some bad things in his book. Okay, I haven't read his book. I've got a book about Khomeini called Khomeini's Ghost. Funny enough, wondering, do I believe in ghosts? What about Libya's Gaddafi? He had a book. He had the little green book. I think some people get them confused. They sort of came out at the same time, and it was the death of the Soviet Union, and people on the left were trying to interweave socialism with Islam, and Gaddafi tried to come up with some kind of Islamically acceptable version of socialism that then got wound up with pan-Arabism, and when the Arabs turned their back on him, he said, right, well, I'm African now, let's reach out to Africa. Valiant Joker is saying, the French murdered King Richard the Lionheart after his pact with Imam Salahuddin. That's interesting. So obviously, over the hundreds and thousands of years, these European powers will have been rivals at one point, allies at another. I find the Battle of the Boyne very interesting in terms of Irish history. Richard the Lionheart is a bit before that. So you're saying that he was murdered by the French because he made a pact with Salahuddin. And famously, Salahuddin had Richard the Lionheart under his sword, apparently, and had the opportunity to kill him, but chose not to. What a nice story. Salahuddin, the great Kurdish Muslim leader in the region. I always remember it being ironic that Saddam Hussein portrayed himself in paintings as Salahuddin coming to liberate Palestine, yet Saddam Hussein was oppressing the Kurds, and we know the rest. Daniel Braunstein is asking, Leicester Square? No, it's not, Danny, although Danny joined me up there once, and what a cracking night it was. Oh no, that was Trafalgar Square. No, I'm in a different square. I'm in front of this scary-looking statue. Yeah, so there's lots of rivalries that might surprise you. I'm going to mention the Battle of the Boyne, because talk about what you know. This battle in Ireland, to make a long story short, an English king and a Dutch king fighting over Ireland by the River Boyne, and William of Orange was this Dutch Protestant king, and King James II was a Catholic king of England when England was on the verge of returning to Catholicism, and the Jacobites, the followers of James, were with him. But interestingly enough, and I think this stems back to what you were saying about France, I think King James, being a Catholic, was backed by Catholic France, and the Pope of Rome, loyalists won't like me saying this, the Pope of Rome was actually supporting William of Orange. Ironies of ironies, I know, you couldn't make it up. And Valiant Joker is saying the Irish can't be whipped. No, well, the Irish united will never be defeated, but unfortunately they keep falling for the trick of fighting each other. And that's the oldest trick in the book. And I see it in here in the comments, I see it at Speaker's Corner. Oh, you share this, oh, you Sunni that. I know you've got a disagreement that you will never be able to reconcile. So just put it to one side. Say, you know what? Let's not talk about that. Let's agree to respect each other's difference, and that is that. Let's not dwell on the negative. Why did the Pope support William of Orange? Well, there was something to be gained, and I think it was a family connection. I will have to read up on it, Danny. I've gone in all guns blazing without the full facts. I just remember this ironic factor that the Pope was actually backing William of Orange, who rode a black horse, not a white horse, apparently, but he's always depicted King Billy. I mean, the fact that he was who he was, I think most loyalists probably think he came from Belfast or something. He was a Dutch guy. These were two foreign kings, one from England, one from Holland, fighting in Ireland over who rules the United Kingdom. They would have been better off just abandoning the whole thing and just having Ireland for the Irish. That's what I think, anyway. Anyway, I don't think there's any occupations that I haven't mentioned. If there are any occupations that people would like me to talk about, put them in the comments or email me, and I'll do a chat about it another time. Because I do like to question myself. People do say to me, why Palestine, why Palestine? There are other occupations in the world. I do think Palestine is one of the most pressing matters. It's a very brutal and long-running occupation. Don't forget that's been going for 70 years. Kashmir, as we said tonight, has become the most heavily occupied region on the earth. It's one soldier for every Kashmiri. One soldier for every 10 Kashmiris. That's rather high ratio. Kofif is saying, if I remember correctly, one of my Irish ancestors fled with the King of England. Yeah, it's very possible. I wonder which king that was. And Danny Bornstein is saying he is in Ireland right now. Glad to have you tuning in from Ireland, Dan. Must be a different time for you. Completely different time zone over in Ireland. 50 years behind. Here is a contribution from Hassan Radwan, who is always a very welcome contributor. Muslim governments, including Iran, pay lip service to supporting the cause of the Palestinians and opposing Israel because it makes them look good in the eyes of the people, because it's such an emotive issue for Muslims. Okay, so there's Hassan Radwan questioning the genuineness of the aid that's given to Gaza by the Iranian government. I've got no doubt he's right, though. This does make them look good, but at least they look good. I'd much rather they look like someone who cares about their Sunni Muslim brothers in Gaza, and Gaza is 99% Sunni Muslim and perhaps 1% Christian and 0% Shia. I'd be very surprised. So at least they're reaching out in they're doing a bit of non-sectarian PR, but even if it is, as he says, only lip service. Yeah, Valiant Joker saying Union of Jacob 3 patron saints, George England, Patrick Ireland and Andrew Scotland, but George is a Muslim. Well, and I spoke to Hassan Radwan about this. St. George, who is not only the patron saint of England, he's the patron saint of Georgia, no surprise, and Greece, and Spain, and Palestine. And in Palestine, St. George is known as Khadr, which comes from the Akhdar or Khidr, for green, the word for green. And I wonder, is it because he killed a green dragon, which, as you know, relates back to aliens and the fact that a secret bunch of aliens are running this world. But we won't dwell on my nutjob conspiracy theories too much. Valiant Joker is saying George is also known as Gurgis and Khizr. Yeah, there you go. So Kyrgyz, I can get the link, and I wonder what the etymology of George is. It could well mean green or something like that. Valenjak is saying the Order of Garter. I'm not sure about that. I'm well into my orders, the Orange Order, the ancient order of Hibernians, which would be the opposite to that. Not so ancient, actually. Hassan Radwan is saying shush about the aliens. We have to keep it. Yes. Redo my tin foil and don't mention the war or the aliens. Yeah. Talking of the Orange Order, as we went there, and for those of you that don't know, it's this Protestant fraternity that began in Ireland but has spread other parts of the world, which is very much about preserving Protestantism as opposed to Catholicism, in sort of a resistance to Catholicism, in fact. And this was a point, a friend of mine shared a video of Liverpool Football Club booing the British national anthem. Now, this is an Irish guy, a bit of anti-English Irish banter going on. Politically, someone who believes in a united Ireland, no doubt. And he was sort of jokingly saying, I guess I'll support Liverpool from now on, because the Liverpool Football Club boo the English national anthem, even though they are an English club. But there's a sense of separatism in Merseyside which does set them apart from the rest of the UK. And maybe one day Merseyside would like to have a level of autonomy and a devolved parliament like Scotland and Wales, for example. However, the thought occurred to me, and I made this point in the comments, and I said you would never guess that Liverpool Football Club, who boo the British national anthem when it's played, were founded by a member of the Orange Order. Oh yes, the Orange Order, which is all about Protestantism, and in Ireland it puts Protestantism as synonymous with a British culture and a British identity, and they march with the Union flag alongside all their banners, although I don't think that needs to be the case. I think you can be a proud Irishman, a proud Protestant, without believing that you are somehow British, because there's Britain here and Ireland there. It's the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So Northern Ireland is not part of Britain, it's part of the United Kingdom. And if you wish, you can be proud of that fact. But anyway, the fact that Liverpool Football Club boo the British national anthem must be very strange if, when they were founded over 100 years ago, their founder was a member of the Orange Order and presumably was all about Protestant and British culture. And it's not as widely publicised, but in Merseyside, the two main clubs, Liverpool and Everton, are a mirror image of what Celtic and Rangers are in Glasgow. And everyone knows in Glasgow that Rangers are the Protestant club and Glasgow Celtic are the Catholic club or the nationalist club. But in Merseyside, originally, Everton were regarded as the Catholic club and Liverpool were the Protestant club, which is synonymous with loyalism, yet they boo the English national anthem, and I think, or the British national anthem. And I think that shows you how marginalised a region could become due to the likes of Maggie Thatcher, who destroyed the north of the country, and people who object to British imperialism abroad are actually really objecting to a certain type of Britishness, which is essentially the south of England. And a lot of people, and not everyone, not all, but most. And I think you know what I'm talking about. Kovif is saying it was the William of Orange thing split the family in two, with one side supporting the new king and the other the old. The one that supported the new king was the one that one of the Irish allowed a sword in Ireland. Okay, so there you go. It was a family split. Valiant Joker saying, you just can't shake the Dragon Knight out of you, Julian. Thank you very much. And by St. Patrick's, growl. Yes, absolutely. St. Patrick, who was probably from Wales, I think. He was certainly from Britain, and he was kidnapped by Irish pirates, and as a way of paying them back, he converted them to Christianity. Hassan Radwan is saying to Sabah al-Khair, Habibi wa inta min ahlu, ya Hassan. Good night to you. I love having Hassan Radwan contribute on here because he's always really good. And he gave me a great guest coming up this week. If you saw the trailer, I've got another ex-Muslim vegan. What is it about people that leave Islam? They become vegan. Yeah, and the Valiant Joker is saying, gotta love them pirates. Yeah, absolutely. Piracy. Apparently that's how the British Empire started. That's how we went around the world for the royal family. The pirates would go and come back and say, look, we found this place, we found that place. Yeah, it all started with pirates. And of course, pirate radio. Kofif is saying vegans will die off pretty quick. Will they? Or will we die off if we don't switch to a vegan diet? The planet is running out of resources. Economically, it is much more efficient to just eat the plants that the animals feed on, rather than feeding all the plants to the animals, waiting for them to grow, and then a few years later, after you've spent gallons and gallons of water eating the animals that you've fed the plants to. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It's hard enough to eat enough as it is. Never mind trying to avoid meat and I try to avoid pork. I don't eat pork, and that's enough rules for me. But people saying they all get differences if they go over the top. Yeah, look, we shouldn't be excessive. All the wise men in history have told us, live a middle way, find the middle path, the wasat, as they say in Arabic. And Kofif is saying, I hear of vegans feeding dogs only vegetable and they die. Yeah, I think feeding your dog the same diet as yourself, whether you're vegan or not, is probably a bit extreme. The clue's in the name, it's a dog. They should probably eat dog food or something like that. I would have thought so. Well, look guys, it's been marvellous for me. We're approaching the hour mark. Can't believe I've done an hour on here. The time flies when we're all chatting away. And Kavif is mentioning that they go bald. Do they? There's nothing wrong with bald. Bald is beautiful. And Valiant Joker is saying something amazing. Arm, leg, arm, head, Allah. All very strange coincidence. That is a strange coincidence. It would be strange if it was the same in every language and not just English. But you'll have to work that out. Anyway, this has been Lessons for Life. We'll do it again soon. Don't know where, don't know when. Watch out for more videos coming from Speaker's Corner. And yeah, take care of yourself. We were here, we're gone. Laters.